Okay, we are recording. Thank you, everyone on YouTube land, for joining me for this episode number 3 of How to Save Your Life. Today, I am speaking with Bridget Jackson Buckley, and she is going to tell us her story of her experience with studying the course and the effect that it's had on her life to inspire all of you to start the course and to transform your experience here in this reality, which is obviously very challenging at times. So welcome, Bridget.
Thank you, Tina. Thank you.
So we'll start off with how long have you been doing the course?
I started in 2021.
Oh, okay, so you're relatively new.
Yeah, I am.
Okay, 2021. After the big lockdown,
Yeah.
what prompted you to begin? What got you into the idea of doing this crazy big blue book?
The short answer is you.
Oh,
but
okay.
but the story around that is that we were home for the shelter in place, and I'm on the email list of Rob Schwartz, author of Your Soul's
Oh,
Plan.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
I love Rob's work. I love Your Soul's Plan. And he sent out a newsletter about and included in his newsletter that you were going to be starting 40 days and 40 nights. Whenever Rob suggests someone's work, I look at it. So
okay,
that's how I found out about you. And I started watching the 40 Days and 40 Nights. I knew nothing about you. I really knew nothing about the course other than I had heard the name A Course in Miracles, but I knew nothing about it. So I
right.
started listening to you channel and I was like, what? Like, what is she? What is this? So I asked my daughter, who's pretty intuitive and sensitive, to come in to watch one of your videos with me and check in for her sign of validation. And she
Right.
received it, increased heart palpitations. And so we continued listening to you. And there was just this consistent reference to A Course in Miracles. And for whatever reason, one of my friends, oh, she had joined your community. I wasn't in your community. And she was telling me about the course. And so she was like, and Tina did these daily Course in Miracles videos. And I distinctly remember having the thoughts, oh, well, maybe I could try it because the videos might make something more easy to understand.
Right.
So for Christmas, my daughter said, what do you want? And I said, A Course in Miracles book. So she ordered my copy,
Oh,
I ordered hers, and we started on January 1st, 2021.
how sweet. So you just kind of, oh, so it was you following, yeah, because Robert and I did a session together where I think he interviewed me or I interviewed him. I can't remember.
But I have to say, Tina, when I start, like, I really knew nothing about the course.
Yes.
Like I had worked previously years ago at a spiritual center, and I remember that there was a Course in Miracles group, but I kind of looked at it as like those other people, I don't know what they're doing. So
Yeah.
when I opened up the book for lesson number 1, I had no idea what I was getting into, and I had no expectations.
Right. That's the experience that I had when I got the course. My sister bought it and kind of threw it on my lap and said, I don't know why I bought this. You should read it. And it was literally at the worst time in my life that it came to me. And I started reading it, but I had no computer, no TV. I didn't know it was a global phenomenon. I didn't know there were Course in Miracles teachers. I just had this pristine experience with it. So I didn't have videos or anything like that. And I think it's great to come into it without any expectations because
Yeah.
that's one of the things that limits us, right? Is our expectations. Think, oh, that's not what I was expecting, and you're just like, okay. Um, so that's awesome. So, what was your experience? How did you feel during doing the lessons? Did you find them hard, or did you enjoy them? Like, what experience did you have around the lessons themselves?
Honestly, I feel like the experience around it was like my intellectual response. Like, what is this? Nothing means anything. What is this charity? Like that part. But I didn't feel like they were hard to do. It was more just getting out of the way of thinking, I know something, like I know a little bit better. So I did the lessons, and I'm a pretty avid reader.
Right.
I've read a lot of books. And so when I started reading the text, Tina, I didn't know what the hell it was saying.
Yeah.
So I
I
would put it down for a while and like, I think I need a couple weeks to just absorb it. But then I would get these internal nudges to
Mhm,
pick it back up, and it felt like keep going. So
mhm.
I did the lessons like how they were supposed to be done. And it was just a matter of actively choosing to follow the template, do it every day for this certain amount of time. But so they didn't feel hard to me. It was just getting my mind out of the way. But isn't that what we're doing?
Yeah, it is, and you know, Jesus is very clear at the beginning. He says, "You don't have to like them, you don't have to understand them, you just
Yeah.
have to do them." And I think that's a really important thing. I know I mentioned it in one of the previous videos, but for people who encounter those first few lessons that say something like, "Nothing in this room means anything," immediately your mind wants to argue and go, "Of course it does. That's a picture
Yes.
water on the fireplace." And that's the discursive mind that the course is going to help you heal, that constant dialogue, that constant commentary on life, right? Like, oh, they
Hmm.
shouldn't be doing that, or this is important. um, and initially, I think people really can understand how it's going to look when you start to not have this personal agenda for what life is going to look like, or wanting to control everything. Because really, I don't know if you found this in the couple of years that you've been doing it, is that the course really is teaching on surrender, surrendering to guidance, surrendering to what is.
So,
How have you found that in terms of your experience?
oh, I absolutely see that, Tina. It's like I mean, I mean, while I'll say it hasn't been difficult to do the lessons because I'm always reading. So I'm always in
Mhm.
that sit down, hold a book, like I love it so much. But just I don't know what's best for me. Like, what really? Like, just letting
Right.
go of all of that was like really like it was kind of hard to take in. But as you continue to do the lessons, you start to understand
Mhm.
why. Like a lot of the things that you choose and want are from the conditioned mind, which I did not know. You think it's a organic, authentic choice, but
Mhm.
it's really not. So it's taking you much deeper into self exploration. Why are you choosing what you're choosing? Why are you doing what you're doing? And I thought, because like I said, I've read so many books on spirituality, I was like, well, I know a thing or two. But the course really strips it down. Like, and you start to see, wow, like I really don't know anything. Like I
A
know that
humbling thing, yeah.
yeah, yeah, you're a child of God, but like there is so much I don't know. And so it truly is a reorienting yourself and like getting to know yourself anew as a Christ child. And it
Mhm.
can be there can be some not so pretty moments to it during the stripping down.
Yes. I had no idea what was going on in my mind until I started the
Yeah.
lesson. And I was in a constant fight with my mum in my head. And I didn't know that was really going on until I
Yeah.
started looking at what was happening. Okay, so you've got a particular experience that you'd like to share with us, how the course has affected you. So you've been doing it for 2 years now, which isn't very long in the scheme of things.
Yeah.
What effect has it had on you in your personal life?
So to piggyback just on what you just said, that you were having internal arguments in your mind with people who weren't in the room, and you just had no idea. I could totally say the same thing. And the most I would say, as far as relationships, because a lot changes in your life when you start to do it. As far as relationships, the one that had the most obvious change was with my stepfather, because it was a very, very just I would describe it as contentious. I don't know if he would describe it that way, like a battle of you think you know everything and you're not going to tell me, and just a battle of the egos. And but before I would go over to my parents' house, I mean, before I even got on the freeway, I'd be like, okay,
Here we go.
right, like what is he going to say today? Like as I'm walking up the door, like I feel tense, like I'm prepared for battle.
Yes,
I'm
totally.
prepared to defend myself, and I'd walk in already tense, and I was just, oh my gosh, like I was so judging him. I was really judging him, I mean, over the years, and it was the course that that truly, truly taught me and is teaching me even more because it's a
Mhm.
continual
Yes.
that I wasn't feeling bad because of what he was saying and that he shouldn't be saying those things, but it was my judgment of him. And
Mhm.
that was like, that was a just an epic eye opener because it just, I was so self-righteous and, really in my ego, and I didn't even know it. I was walking around like I read spirituality books, I go to a spiritual center, I meditate, I'm pretty good, but I'm judging this person who raised me like this. So it was such an eye opener when I was really starting to understand what was happening. So it wasn't like I I don't remember ever saying, I'm not going to judge him. I was doing the lessons,
Right.
and then it was like, well, wait, I'm not judging him as much as like I'm not judging him. And I'm noticing when I'm going over to the house now, like I'm mindful that I'm not prepared for battle and that I'm going to just go in and just be in acceptance of right where he is without thinking that I know what's best for him. And if
Mhm.
he would just change, everything would be wonderful. Like just I don't know. It just seems like I just looked up and like we just had so much softening
Mm.
between us. Like there was, and I know it with every fiber of my being. Just got chills that it was me stopping the judgment of him and really making the choice to, okay, if he wants to watch CNN, let's talk CNN.
Yeah.
If he wants
Yeah.
to see the world the way he does, who am I to say? And it just it transformed the relationship. Like when I walk in that door now, he's just like, "Hey," like
Aw.
his eyes just light up and like he's had some health challenges over the past couple months and we've had such heart-opening moments, when I'm standing over the hospital bed or when I was listening to him really speak from his heart, in a way that none of us had ever witnessed. But for
Mhm.
whatever reason, he felt comfortable to speak to me. And I was like, this is the course. It's the
It's called
course.
Course in Miracles for a
It's the
reason,
course in
right?
miracles. There's no way I would have arrived at that
Mm.
conclusion because I thought I was right.
Mhm. And it's so interesting that really we don't understand, when Jesus in the Bible says, judge not that you be not judged,
Yeah.
you actually don't realize what that means until you start
Mhm.
doing the course, right? Which is, oh my God, I'm in, like you say, you were driving in the car, you're preparing for battle. The second you walk in that door, that person really doesn't stand a chance, really, because you've pre-paved that meeting with anger, right?
Yep. Yep.
And
Yep. Yep.
so you found that it was kind of organic. You noticed that it was happening rather than actively practicing it.
Absolutely. That's a beautiful way to say it. I mean, as you continue with it, I start to, I'm now like, okay, I'm going to this event. Let me make like, what am I bringing him? And am I in a place of love and gratitude? Now I'm very like, what is my conversation like? Like, what am I
Right.
saying? What am I thinking? But back then, it felt very organic. Like this is changing. And
Mhm.
like, just I want to say like the change was in him, but clearly it was in me, but it looks like it was in him because he's just so
Yeah.
much nicer and
The
loving.
thing that's really interesting about this is, you hear this idea that this is an illusion and there's only one of you here and nothing's real, or this is like a waking dream. But if you think about it, the evidence that we get doing the course is I change my mind and that person changes. It's proof that they're part of your consciousness on some level, because if you look at Newtonian physics, there's no reason why you changing your mind should change someone else. But
Right.
this is consistently what I hear from people is I started to do the course, I started to be less judgmental, and these relationships started to heal. But even if you go down to the logical, which is every time you drove towards him, you were prepared for war, just not doing that is going to cause a different kind of response in someone, right? Because I
Hmm.
remember thinking about my mum. and I'd always been having these battles with her in my head. Um, because my mind was primed with battles, all she had to do is say one thing that was not quite what I wanted, and that preparing for war surfaced immediately. Whereas now I can have a conversation. I phone her. I don't live close to her, but now I'll have a conversation, and I immediately open with, "What have you been doing that you love? Like, how are you feeling?" And I'm sending her a little bit of money to buy some winter boots right now. But that's the kind of thing that has come from doing this, where there is no battle in my head anymore, and she doesn't reside in my mind anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I'm with her when I'm with her,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm coming from a place of, where can we connect? Where can we connect?
Yes.
Yeah. Like if
Yes.
she's watching The Bachelor on TV, which old Tina would have been super judgmental about, I'd say, well, oh, have you got an episode of The Bachelor coming on? Let's watch it. Who do you like? And why do you like her or him or whatever? And I engage with her in her place.
Mm-hmm.
And that's loving, because that's where she is. And it's also, when you think about it, and I'd love to hear your thought on this, is how arrogant are we to think that we know what other people should do?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I totally this is the understatement of the century. I totally agree because you read a couple books and you think, "Oh, I know that." When I first started reading like spirituality and meditation type books and really going within, you're like, "Oh, I know all this stuff." And if I just tell them and show them, they'll just get on board. Like, I know what you should do. And it's like, I just didn't really realize until the course how arrogant and just how self-righteous I was. And you do see some not so pretty aspects of yourself, but
Yes.
you do want to know. I mean, it's not always, butterflies and ice cream,
No.
but you do want to know what's in there. But I mean, it's the letting go of judgment, but it is truly, truly realizing and understanding that he is a reflection of me. And when I'm sitting there, gosh, he just thinks he knows everything. Wow. Well, I wonder who else is exhibiting that same behavior. Because it just
Yeah.
seems like when you're in this, it's so easy to be like, oh yeah, like, oh well, I'm doing that. But when it comes to this person, no, I'm nothing like them. And that's one thing that I have been able to really take in from the course and from your
Mhm.
channelings, which have been pivotal as well for a deeper understanding, is that everyone is an aspect of us, the pretty and the not so pretty. And
Mhm.
if I can now walk into that room and see light in him and have the intention to see it, then I'm going to see it. And I do feel this, like, this recognition, like I was exhibiting those same terrible, characteristics that I judged him for. So let me really look at that and, transform that and let that go.
There's a phrase that I use, which is, we accuse other people of what we're doing.
Totally.
And Jesus calls this the grand projection.
Yep.
Most people understand that phrase now of projection in the sort of general psychological sense, but truly we accuse other people of what we're doing. And when you have an antagonistic relationship with somebody, or somebody that triggers you all the time, you literally are unconscious of the fact that whatever you're accusing them of is what you're doing, because that's how the ego hides it. It projects it out onto somebody else so you don't look inside. And that is how the
Yeah.
separation is perpetuated, is making someone else guilty. And in terms of people doing the course that haven't, they've been watching these videos maybe, and they're like, oh god, they keep talking about the course. um, what would be your encouragement to people when you think about someone who's watching this video? Maybe they've just landed upon it, because of the title, How to Save Your Life. um, what would you say to them about starting the course? What would you recommend?
Gosh. Well, actually, what's coming through right now to talk about is that it, I feel like like the Course in Miracles, it's a living, Like there's a consciousness that you go into. I have the book right here. I've just stopped tagging it because I
Oh,
was getting ridiculous. But it's like when you go into it, you feel the consciousness. And I want to say that it transcends time because I was just so unfamiliar with separation and the ways that the ego can really hide stuff from you. I've seen it in myself, but the separation, I guess there's something with me and father figures in this life, I'll say, because I've had this with my stepfather, but my biological father passed several years ago. Our 23-year-old was just born in 2000, and he wasn't really in my life. Like my stepfather raised me. I just had a distant relationship with him, I'll say. But I had this thing with like abandonment, like just all this about abandonment. Like I didn't want to put my kids in childcare when they were younger. I didn't want them to feel abandoned. Whenever my husband would leave, I'd be like, when are you coming back? And like I all thought that it was because my father didn't come around. That was the story that was told. And one day, like a couple of years ago, well, obviously when I started the course, I'm on my afternoon walk, minding my own business. And out of nowhere, I think I had just read one of your transcribed A Course in Miracles channelings where you do the readings and you do that. And out of nowhere, I was like, oh, the abandonment has nothing to do with my father. It had nothing to do with him. It had to do with the separation from God, coming into physical form. I stopped dead in my tracks and I saw like this, I don't know how to describe it. It was like an image of my father, like it had cleared something for him, even though he had already transitioned. And what I just described doesn't even do it justice. It was like something cleared in him, and it was like an instant insight is what it's referred to when you know something that you previously didn't know. So it's like if you're thinking about doing the course, like I just think that it goes far beyond what we think we know it's doing. Because I'm talking about removing judgment, but to have that experience where something cleared in whatever timeline or whatever across the veil for me and my father, and that abandonment, just the idea of it, just my belief in it, just disappeared in an instant. So I would say go into it open-hearted and open-minded and receive what is there for you, because it is a deeply profound and healing text that I think it goes beyond what we understand.
yeah, totally. Yeah, I think that's a wonderful way of putting it. But of course, when I think back of what I just said, is we accuse others of what we've done.
Yeah.
You were accusing your fathers of abandoning you, but you had actually abandoned your father.
Yeah.
Your father
Yes.
in heaven, right? So
The father. Yes.
you were accusing the fathers. And one of the things that I think is so interesting is people will often ask this question: why on earth would we do this to ourselves? Why would we do this to ourselves? Why would we separate? And I think we're doing it all the time through our judgments of people and through our accusations of people. We're continuing perpetuating the separation. So we didn't do it once, we're doing it constantly. And this little discussion that we've had about your stepfather, that's an example of you were perpetuating the separation every single minute of every day as it related to him. And now that you're practicing forgiveness and you're essentially praying for to have your mind healed, because that's what we're doing when we do the course, we're asking to have our mind return to wholeness.
Yes.
That's what that experience of wholeness and knowing what is you've now, that's the truth. It wasn't about your father or your stepfather, it was about you abandoning God. And that's the problem. And the course says that's the only problem, but it's hidden beneath all our projections and all our stories in this three-dimensional experience. But we do have this opportunity every single day to step back from judgment and become more loving, and that's the journey home. The journey home is not towards death, but it's towards as Jesus says, everlasting life. And
Hmm.
that death is part of the ego story. It's not part of God's story. And it's a huge concept for people to grasp, and it's not something that you will necessarily understand when you start the course. But
Hmm.
as you do the lessons and as you start to have these epiphanies and these experiences, I had a lot of spiritual experiences doing the course,
Me
uh,
too.
out of body experiences, and these perceptual shifts like
Yep.
you talked about, where your mind will, like, I liken it to a safe opening, where you do that one click and then you can open the door and then you see something you literally had never seen before.
Hmm.
And so it's an act of faith doing these funny lessons every 10 minutes or half an hour or whatever. You think, well, how is that going to do it? But what you're saying when you're doing the lessons is, I want my mind healed. And all you have to do is ask, and it's given. But we don't realize what we're doing on a daily basis to prevent that awakening process, right?
Right, right, right. And I don't know. For me, like having read so many books, the course is like dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's. Because even having read those books, I had so many questions. And I'm on my, what am I, my third or fourth reading of the text.
Right.
And
Yeah.
it's like, and every time I read it,
It's
it's like
like a new book. It's like
it's yes, it's like a new book. And I was like, oh my gosh, I could have done a happy dance because I read The Voice for God, chapter 6, and I understood that entire chapter. And it was like that never, you're like, well, what is this with it? But I totally, totally understood it. But I would just say like it I don't know. It's just, I'm so grateful for it at this time because it's a tool that I go to every day, obviously. And even listening to you channel where, sometimes in the network, people will call in with questions, and Jesus will always say through you to just read the course and read the course. And even sometimes listen to that, I will like, how is reading this gonna? But then I will find myself sometimes agitated, and I will sit down and pick it up and start reading and literally feel better,
yes.
feel myself relaxing into it. So there's so much that's here for us to help us during this time.
Yeah. And he said this book was written for this time,
Yeah.
that 50 years ago, they knew this time was coming of really difficult, tumultuous, and mind control was going to be used.
Hmm.
So the reason that mind control doesn't work on course students is because we're in charge of our minds.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
most people aren't. Most people have no idea where their thoughts arise from, or who, or where the program came from, for example. Because
Mhm.
I think if you ask most people, are you free to choose whatever you want? They go, well, yeah, I'm free to choose.
Just
You
had
know,
that conversation a couple weeks ago.
yeah, and actually, you're not free to choose. You've got
Right.
a lot of very active programs coming, um, very active programs that cause you to make a choice. That it could be going up the pub every Friday night for drinks and drinking on the weekend. That's a program. If you look at movies and TV shows, drinking alcohol is constantly promoted in so many scenes in movies. I just notice it. I'm like, oh wow, the camera zoomed in on that bottle of wine, or the hero's drinking whiskey all the time, or whatever it is. And those things are subconscious programs that are being strengthened all the time. So you may even associate having alcohol with being successful, because often the successful person in a movie has a lovely decanter of whiskey, and when they walk in from work at night, they pour themselves a drink. That's a program. And we have thousands of them. Ananda and Jesus have said, oh, you have no idea how many programs you have running.
Yeah.
But these are the things that start to be revealed to us, right? As we go in and look at our thoughts, you're like, oh, what? That wasn't a very nice thing to think. Why am I thinking that? That's not good.
Yeah. I mean, I would say, we're talking about it with so much love because it is love. There's so much love, but it's going to bring about some changes,
Mhm.
because I just didn't know. Like, you don't know what you don't know. And when you know better, you do better.
Yes.
Because the movies I watched, I just
Now you
I
like
would,
you
I would,
turn
I
it off
would,
after
I
a minute, right?
cannot, I cannot watch them, and then as I got a little deeper in it, I was like, I did go through this period of like thinking that I was losing something.
Yes.
But it was the practical messages in A Year in Forgiveness, your channel commentary, that it, I'm not sacrificing anything or losing anything to go deeper
Mhm.
into a relationship with the divine. I mean, it's a gain, but I was looking at it like, because I remember sitting on the couch like, well, what the hell am I going to watch? Everything is so death oriented, and I used to love that stuff.
I know.
And like, what am I going to do? Like, I don't want to go so there was this point where I felt like I was just kind of like in the middle of the water, like I had left the shore and I couldn't even see it,
Yeah.
like feeling like this sense of loss for things. But the feeling that I have the majority of the time now, it's invaluable. The peace and the gratitude. And I have a daily meditation practice where I hold love, and I feel love so much more often than I ever knew possible. I
Yeah.
suspect that there's more that,
Yeah.
but it feels so filling.
Yeah.
And so like I'm noticing that feeling of yearning and of missing something is diminishing.
Mhm.
And that was the driver of a lot. Like, well, maybe I should go to this job. Maybe I should do this because of that. Something is missing. Something's not right. And I noticed the Course in Miracles, it's not a practice for me. It's a way of life.
Way of life. Yeah.
It's a way of life. And I'm noticing that I'm not like feeling, oh, something is missing. Of course, there are things I want to do, consciously create,
Mhm.
but it's not the same. I feel peace a lot more often and gratitude than I ever have.
Yeah. That's so awesome. I love hearing Course in Miracles stories. I think it's the best thing ever. And so anyone who's watching, if you haven't started the course, or if you tried it a few years ago and you're like, oh, that was too many words, I don't know, I can't do it. Give it a try. And I always suggest just starting with the lessons, because the lessons are in a very, very approachable, easy language. And the text is important, but it's extremely difficult. When you were talking about how incomprehensible it was when you first picked it up, I'm the same. Very good reader, very good comprehension level, didn't understand a word of it. But I couldn't stop reading it. I had an overwhelming urge to read it. And I would read pages and pages and go, I don't even know what I've read, but I can't stop. I think that was because I was destined to do this work. So I
Yeah.
had to, I was getting really pushed to do it. But I say to people, even if you just read one page and you don't understand it, that's fine. Just read a page a day. It's 365 pages in a year. And it's like, the way I liken it is if you pick up a Russian book, you won't understand one single word of that Russian book. But if you take a Russian class once a week, there'll come a point when you look at that Russian book and you'll be like, oh, that means and that means house, and you'll start to understand the language. And that's the way I look at it: is the lessons are the language of love. The text is Jesus' words, and is at the frequency of love. And that as you do the lessons, the text will come clearer and clearer as you practice. And it really is learning a new language. And I think that's why we don't understand it when we first read it. It literally is in a higher frequency language.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we come in with our lower
Lower
frequency
for
judgmental mind, and we actually can't comprehend it because it's at a different frequency. So that's kind of how I liken it.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I mean, you just said that so beautifully. But I also, while you were talking, I was like, I also just want to say, like, fear. I used to think free will was I could choose whatever I want, but now I understand free will is, are you using your free will to choose love or fear?
Hmm.
And that so much of it is about trusting in God, trusting in the Holy Spirit. Because when I came to this, I was laden with conditions like, oh yeah, God, lead my life, but don't send me to Zimbabwe. Don't send me
Right.
over there. I don't think I want to do that. And now I'm so much more like, when I say lead me and show me, I mean it. Like,
Yeah.
my heart is in it, because I have been led to activities and events and people that I would have never chosen for myself. but I can recognize so keenly the way spirit speaks to me through curiosity and heightened inspiration and excitement. So when I feel that, I know it's spirit is guiding me. And I'm just finding with the expansion of consciousness that you experience as a result of this, that things open up that are so beautiful that you would have never expected or chosen for yourself.
So Jesus made me go to Africa. I ended up going to Africa. I went to Gambia, West Africa, and when I came back, I had a QHHT session, and it turned out I was a slave trader
Oh,
in another incarnation. And he'd sent me to Africa, to the place where the slaves were, shipped
sent
out.
off. Yeah.
That was part of the awakening process for me to get this piece of information, that I had been a slave trader in a previous incarnation. And when I got that piece of information, I was like, oh, that makes so much sense. But it didn't come until that guidance that was him. He wanted me to go
Mm-hmm.
to Africa.
Mm-hmm.
He asked me to go again. It was the July before COVID hit. And he said, I want you to go on a safari and take your son, Kieran, in November. It was November 2019. And it was too big I just couldn't get it together to organize it. I live in Western Canada, so South Africa's a long way away. And lo and behold, didn't COVID hit? And I was like, darn it, Tina, you should have listened. He was very specific. So yeah, some of the challenges that come your way are from an inexperienced mind, challenging, uh, but you are being shown things you need to see.
Mm-hmm.
And don't let anything that we're talking about frighten you. If you're thinking about doing the course, nothing will come to you that you're not ready for or not willing to experience. And one of the things that people will say, oh, I want to learn to channel, what should I do? And I say, do the course, because the course is a frequency raising practice that will teach you about the things you need to get rid of and let go of, so that your frequency is high.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're channeling, you want to have a high frequency. You don't want to be down in the sad, angry, depressed place, because you're going to call in a being that's of that frequency. So you're going to channel a match to your frequency. So I always tell people to do the course if they're interested in learning to channel. So is there anything you'd like to say in closing?
Well, I would just say be open. just be open, because so much, and not that you would do any of this to get anything, because it truly is about letting go. But I don't know, you open up your heart and open up your life, and they're just beautiful experiences that come to you. And I absolutely agree that nothing comes to you until you're ready to experience it. I didn't do any of this thinking I want to channel, I want to do this, I want to do that, but you will absolutely see changes, in yourself with a consciousness expansion. But just know that there's so much support for us in this. So just have faith in that.
Yeah, it is an act of faith, doing these lessons, and then things happen that you never knew would. Okay, thank you, Bridget, so much. It was lovely
Thank
to
you,
talk
Tina.
to you again, and I'll be posting this on YouTube sometime in the next couple of days.
Thank you, Tina.
Okay, bye-bye.
Okay. Leave.
Okay, hang on a sec.
Oh.
There we go.